Hi, Emily. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hi, Grace. Thanks for having me. It's this is awesome. We're live right now, and yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great honor to be here with some of the stellar lineup of investors that have been on your show, and I think I might have been the youngest one and the one with the least investing tenure. But this is amazing. Thank you for having
Thank,
me.
Wait, thank you. Okay, so I want to start with maybe we start with your quick background intro. So like you were a founder, and then obviously you have done so many interesting things in the robotic space. Why don't we start with like pre Boost VC? What were you working on, and then what are some like core lessons that you've learned early on in your career at Amazon or at your own company that kind of like took you into who you are today, where you are today?
Yeah, great question. So a little bit of context before we dive into the lessons learned here. I was born and raised in Beijing and immigrated to the U.S. Around middle school time, and I think being an immigrant, really the first thing you know is your English is not your strength, and then you tend to struggle with the integration and in the culture differences. And so that's when I really discovered the robotics club because the kids there are not talking, right? You're just like building the robot, the cool things in a corner. And then even though English was not my strength, I've always thrived in math and science. Even when I was in China, I was always the top performing students there. So I really wanted to gain my confidence from that aspect. And then so yeah, a lot of people know I've had a career in robotics, and so there's like this is the little funny anecdotes for why I got into robotics, and then how challenging it was initially to even be part of that club, which was a very yeah, very like elite club of my high school. And then I'm happy to get into the details, but we don't have to cover that there. So throughout my high school years, our robotics club became yeah, we competed in world championships, we across different competitions, and we did really well. We came up to become the third place in world championships and beating across over 3,000 teams globally. And then, so that was really a moment when I realized that robotics can be an extension of my own ability. And then it gave me the confidence to launch my career into robotics. And then so from that point on, I've had a career across different sizes and stages across robotics and automation. So I started my career in this 3D printing company. We made a metal and carbon fiber 3D printing materials. And then really saw the company grew from 90 people to 200 people in the span of a year, and I really experienced the growing pain of this hyperscaling hardware company. And then from there, I spent 2.5 years at Amazon Robotics, expanding their warehouse logistics automation to Europe and APAC. And I really learned the power of building an automation first system, and then as opposed to like integrating automation into existing infrastructure, where we saw the throughput going from 60% capacity to 400%. And then also throughout the journey, I was a founder at a robotic company. I built my own robotic bartender, serving the office and co-working spaces, and kind of as a way to empower office managers to bring the community together. And then learn a ton through that experience how across different challenges in customer discovery and then building out the manufacturing and supply chain process. I'm happy to dig into any of the categories later. But yeah, I think I've just been lucky to have a front row seat in seeing how leveraging the power of technology is able to transform traditional industries. And then so after spending some time in business school, I am now sitting at the intersection of business and engineering, and I'm very passionate about helping founders through Boost VC to kind of get their ideas off the ground, going from an engineering project, a academic research to something that's commercializable. Yeah, and then very, very excited to be in this position now, and this is the best time to be in deep tech.
For sure. Wait, I want to say hi to Audrey. Hi, Audrey. So maybe yeah, I wanted to say hi. Anyway, so maybe we can start with like, I find it like really interesting that like, I mean, I didn't know that you were like building in 3D in the 3D space. But I guess like for Amazon Robotics, like, can you share more about like what they're building? Because I think like obviously everybody knows Alexia, but besides like, I guess like on the back end to like deliver all these like packages all day, it definitely requires a lot of robotics helps in the whether it's like warehouse management or the logistic kind of stuff. So I guess like how do you think about, I guess like what is Amazon built in the robotic space, and then how do you kind of like help them to accelerate the speed into um you know expand into Asia or like other places?
Great question. And so I think from end to end, the operations at Amazon. I mean, I'm not the most experienced in all across different stages, but I think well, what I do know is the warehouse logistics aspect, right? Like the drives, the warehouse robots, where there are hundreds of robots on the floor of a football field size, and moving items and products around, and then kind of like helping to optimize the picking, the stowing, and then the process of fulfilling the orders for customers. But in addition to the warehouse robotics, Amazon has a variety of different robotics programs, and then I think those are not the areas I'm the best expert just to speak on their behalf. And then so within warehouse, though, I would say so there's the inbound and then the processing and the outbound at a very high level. I think ever since I left Amazon in 2021, there's been a lot of development there as well. So yeah, and then so at the core, what it is as a system engineer, when I was there, my role was to integrate the software, hardware, and an electrical component, and integrating that into one deliverable, deployable package to our downstream partner. And then so there's a team that was designing, for example, the hardware stations around the field. And then there's like the optimization for the robotics path. This is like all pre-AI days. And then we had to manually direct the robots, and then how to avoid crashes with each other, and then how to optimize the flow of the robot. I can only imagine like what's been happening in Amazon now with the integration of AI. Although I do have to say the integration of any new technology and new software is a challenge we were experiencing even during the time I was there. Is the long cycle of testing, of integration, of expanding from a test site into the broader fulfillment center network. It's a 2 to 3 year cycle. And then so in terms of the expansion to globally, what we always do is to start a design template that's 3 to 4 years out into the future. And then from that template, we tweak the design specifically to the specs and regulatory restrictions of each country. And so for Europe, my experience there was really learning the challenges of these like fire exits, fire emergency exits of regulation or restrictions in Munich, for example. Like we spent 2 months just to talk about like moving the fire exit 1 meter away, or not even 1 meter, like less than 1 meter away from our original design, and communicating that to the local fire departments. And then in Poland, every single manufacturing floor requires natural light. So we spent like months on to kind of redesign away from our deviating away from our original design template to kind of fit into the mold of the country. And I think what we've learned through that process is while robotics and automation can be a really I think like it can optimize and then really scale the throughput, it's also extremely challenging when it's being deployed into the real world because of the different culture and regulation differences. And so that's something I now encourage founders to keep in mind when they're thinking about scaling globally or scaling to adjacent industries, and just like truly understanding what the challenges and the requirements are.
That's so interesting. I've never thought of like you have to move the fire uh station like in the meters, kind of like that's like something that actually matters in the robotic space. But maybe we could start with like maybe if you could give us a little bit of background on Boost VC, and then we could talk about all the interesting things that you've, because you guys recently just started, like I guess like just finished the demo day. Maybe we could talk about like some interesting things that you've seen in the demo day.
Yeah, so a little bit context in Boost VC. We are a pre-seed deep tech fund. We are typically the first institutional check into startup, and then our portfolio cover a pretty wide. I would say we take a generalist approach within deep tech. We cover a thesis around robotics, aerospace,
Mhm.
climate, defense, ocean, bio, a little bit of AR, VR as well, and crypto. And so, yeah, so the best way to think about it is we sit in the intersection of hardware and software integration and really extending the power of AI and compute into the physical world, which is, I think, the most like the biggest market opportunity right now for venture capital and most untapped physical AI, embodied AI after this wave of software driven AI approach. And yeah, our broad mission is to turn a sci-fi future into reality. And then so we have a lot of like moonshotty, like crazy ideas in our
Mhm.
portfolio, which is super exciting to work with. And we're also one of the most active pre-seed fund in deep tech, I think. We invest on average one deal per week, which is pretty crazy to a lot of people when we did tell them when we do tell them the story.
What's
Uh,
a portfolio construction kind of look like? Because I feel like, oh, by the way, also saying hi to a LinkedIn user. I don't know who you are, but hi. Also, again, Audrey. So, okay, so I guess like, what does a portfolio construction look like if you invest one company per week? That's very high frequency slash very like a lot of shots on goals.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the early stages, given our pre-seed focus, we really are backing the founder and then like the broader industry of the idea, right? So
Mhm.
we're really leaning into the founder, and then we take a founder first approach. So we really spend the time to get to know them, and then sometimes I spend a lot of my founder interviews and chats on just learning about them, their history, and then we don't spend time talking about too much time spent talking about the tech in the first initial conversations to really understand where they're coming from, whether they've had industry experiences. I'm happy to break down the founder characteristics we look for in depth, but we look for the founder and the broader idea they're starting the company in. And then, so in terms of portfolio construction, if you look at the through line underpinning the portfolios we have, we'll find
Mhm.
founders who are very asymmetric in one areas of their life, and then very passionate, and it moves extremely fast and very ambitious and incredibly smart and intelligent about the industry they're starting their companies in.
I guess like for let's say if you invest one company per week, that's literally 52 companies per year. And for how much of ownership do you have to get to like actually justify the risk that you're taking? Because obviously that's a lot of companies per fund. That's like literally 150 company per fund.
Yeah, I think that might be a better question, to be honest, for one of our GPs who is keeping track of the entire portfolio, and then he is very analytical. Has this like spreadsheet with all the different numbers and moving around at any given time live. And I think our general target is 10 to 15%, but given the current early stage startup market, I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard this. It's very tough to get deals at good valuations. So we kind of like have to play that game and then be okay with a lower percentage of ownership. But then at the same time, we're really there to find and back the greatest founders out there. And then so I think for the right people, it's worth taking a risk and then taking lower ownership. And we're very like good people at the core. So we really are. We put our money where our mouth is. We want to back with the founders, support them, and then be there when they need us. And I think, yeah, I mean, at the same time, we are in the business of venture, so we still need to care about the return. And then we have been performing really well. If
Mhm.
you look at our past returns from our previous funds, and then we just closed our latest fund, to be announced. But yeah, we're excited to be really partnering with the best founders and solving some of the world's hardest problems.
I guess another question is, oh, by the way, maybe we can answer one of the authentic team for real.
Not able to see the live
So
comment.
does the Boost VC invest first or follow others? I'm sure you guys, since you mentioned it's like first check-in, so it's
Great
you
question. Yeah,
lead.
so we're happy to lead, follow, or take up the entire round. We're very independent in our conviction building, and so I think, yeah, we don't really need to follow other investors' conviction.
Um, I wonder, yeah. So I was gonna say, like, I feel like the crypto portfolio is actually pretty good. Like, I've seen some of like these awesome companies, and then like some of the founders actually went on our show before. But I wonder, how do you think about like, in terms of timing? Right now, we briefly talk about like, the figure, not figure, but like just like the humanoid robots. But like, what are something that you think are like pre-trend? So because right now I feel like crypto is like past trend. So like in the past, I guess like early 2016, maybe early 2020 are both like pre-crypto trend took off. But right now I feel like we're in the high, like maybe not height, but like we're in a giant AI wave right now. So I guess like what are some stuff that you feel like are very underappreciated right now?
Underappreciated, great question. I think great question. I think underappreciated is okay. So use the robotics example. There's so many
Mhm,
directions I can take this. I think as human brain, we tend to go from 0 to 1, and then very quickly we think in a black and white kind
mhm,
of framework. And then
mhm,
for robotics, when we talk about robotics, a lot of people in general, especially outside of the deep tech field, tend
mhm,
to like use humanoids, right, as a synonym of robotics. And so
mhm,
I think there's massive opportunities in between, like where we are now with robotics, with this technology, and then the
mhm,
humanoid future 30 to 50 years, say, down the line. And then so kind of leveraging this like physical AI and integrating AI into a physical vessel and then solving real world problems
mhm,
along the way. And then, so for example, like vertical robotics is a great example, leveraging like cheap off the shelf hardware and kind of driving the complexity away from hardware into
mhm,
software. And then grabbing the low hanging fruit in the meantime before we're able to
mhm,
reach that, like the low cost, high compute future that humanoids requires. And then, so I think in general, yeah, a lot of people are curious about, like, is humanoid really the best type of robotics future? And yeah, I think short term bearish, maybe long term bullish on that future. And I think it's a great um, yeah, it's a great future that is exciting to look forward to. But in the meantime, there are tons of low hanging fruit in between the different stages as well, from
mhm.
hardware, from software, from manufacturing, supply chain optimization in the workflow itself.
I wonder what are something that you find, you mentioned about there's a lot of low hanging fruit. What are
Yeah.
the low hanging fruits that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, great question. So, okay, so for example, in vertical robotics, and then
Mhm,
so maybe just like a high level, we're seeing in the robotics field, we're seeing like more money now flowing into the company, but then
mhm,
more and more larger rounds are being raised with fewer companies.
mhm,
So it is really hard to win in that space, and then there's an influx of capital like towards like larger rounds, and then but the smaller and mid-sized rounds are flattened down, just some general industry trend observations. And then so we're seeing more larger rounds being raised in humanoid and robotic foundational models and across autonomous vehicle
mhm,
industries. And so in vertical robotics right now specifically, we're seeing a lot of defense and logistics
mhm,
manufacturing being represented, just because of the overarching political climate we're under right now. And then it's followed by like medical robotics, medical applications, biochemical biolab research, like wet cell lab automation, manufacturing, and agriculture. These like very specific industry requirements that is outside of the general purpose robotics field. And so kind of looking at a specific industry, say agriculture, and really solving their problem from end to end. And in agriculture is actually a great example. So within the industry where there is a general movement and trend towards the older, like a generational shift of farm ownership, for example. Like this is the first generation ever where the owners are younger, they're tech savvy, and they're open to integrate technology into their existing workflow. And there's just so much we still don't know about the soil, the climate predicting the yield of the field and of the crops each year. And then, but there's abundance of data right now from satellite image collection, from drone imaging solutions. And so what are some of the intelligent way to kind of integrate the data we already have at hand, and to generate like intelligent insights from what we are given already, without tapping into the multi-million-billion-dollar hardware industry. And so a lot of software low hanging fruit is across the different traditional industries we're seeing, and this spans across like construction and mining, and then industries that traditionally has not had tech innovation.
I wonder, so maybe, so like one of the audience asked like what excites or scares you in AI and robotics space. I wonder, maybe we could, instead of like talking about this, maybe we could start with the demo day, which was yesterday, right? So like, oh well, Wednesday. So maybe we could talk about like what are some, let's say like maybe you can give us like 3 examples of like the recent company that you are seeing that you find real interesting in the demo day. So to give the audience a little bit ideas on what basically the trends, and to answer the LinkedIn users question, what
What's
excites
the
or scares
question
you.
again?
The question is like what excites or scares you in AI and robotics. But I think maybe we start with the trends and then we talk about the exciting and scares
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
Yeah.
the trend, a great question. So the just at a high level across the different like 35 companies we have,
Mhm.
we're seeing high level breakdown: 19 AI companies, 10 biohealth companies, 9 robotics and automation companies, and 8 aerospace and defense companies, and 5 industrial and logistics companies, and then a few smaller sizes across climate, advanced material manufacturing, consumer. And so I think overall we're seeing, yeah, this influx of interest in robotics, automation, and also bio, which is something that's outside of my in immediate expertise. But I think that there's a unique opportunity in bio right now where, I mean, in times of uncertainty, people flock to safety. So a lot of traditional biotech VC firms are not actively deploying capital to these extremely talented founders who are really truly here to disrupt the industry from a more rebellious approach, contradicting the traditional, like a approach to starting a bio and large pharma company. And so we're capturing a lot of good like high density talent founders and at a good valuation. So we're seeing a lot of bio companies. And then so across robotics and automation, we're seeing on the manufacturing side, using computer vision and just this kind of more optimized workflow to enhance the productivity of manufacturing and warehouse logistics.
Mhm.
And then what else? So drone company, I don't want to name any company specifically because our demo day is still ongoing. Um,
Mhm.
so we want to be fair to all of the companies that are
Mhm.
participating in our demo day. And then so there is a lot of innovation around, even like across bio, for example. There's the company that came to mind specifically. They're integrating AI, like AI chatbot almost, to reduce friction within the wet lab research protocol workflow. And so that was a really fun company, and they're gaining a lot of traction and gaining a lot of users, just like these very, very basic from a technical solution perspective, but then really aiming to solve a customer pain. And I think this is a general trend I want to mention, or like a direction I want to challenge early stage deep tech founders to think in, instead of, because a lot of what broadly defining as a deep tech is like these very hard engineering and technical problems. And then so what we're seeing is these profiles of founders who have spent, their entire career in PhD, like really researching, getting very, very deep into the technology. So when they're spinning out of the lab, they feel very like almost obligated to and then protective of their work and starting companies in the specific niche without the kind of with like less emphasis on really what the problem out there in the world is. And then so if the founders can, go from a problem statement and really narrow it down, what the technology that's actually required to solve the problem, this is a better approach. So it's instead of a technology push, we want to see more market pull. And then sometimes these are where the low-hanging fruits are created. We don't really need the most cutting edge technology for every single startup in order for it to be successful. We just want to see more problems solved in the world.
Mm,
And
I
physical AI.
totally. Okay, so I have a question on like where do you feel like so I guess there's like two questions in one question, but like one part is like how do you think about like where does the money flow right now? Because since you mentioned about like, the manufacturer revamping, like do you see it as like people who are building the software in the hardware space, or do you feel like it's more of like people actually are building the bots within the warehouses and then like re-innovate in the warehouses? And another sub question is like how do you think about like where are investor most excited about, like where are people actually investing money in versus like, a lot of founders are building in a particular space, but in the end of the day, like we only see like the really huge exits in a few companies versus like, a lot of like um yeah, I guess like how does the money flow in the entire, I guess, hardware industry? That's like part of the question.
Yeah, I think hardware in general is hard to invest in. And then I think there are two major camps of investment where the money we're seeing is happening. One is the pre-seed, very, very early stage, where the funds are backing just the founders and then hoping they'll figure it out type of approach. So smaller check sizes, sometimes like no ownership, like uncapped save, really just to build a relationship with the cracked founders.
Mhm.
And also a lot of money flowing to later stage, right? Like companies raising 50 million and above, because these are the type of companies who have validated their technology in the market. They have found product market fit. They have MVP. They have revenue, and then so there is a proven need, demand, and then like a paying customer track record for these companies. So it's easier for companies to work for VC firms to build a validation and conviction around these companies.
Mhm.
And so we're seeing a gap between like the $4 million to $10 million race, and then where investors now, even with this new hype cycle, physical AI, where we're not seeing a lot of movement there, and so a lot of companies are not getting funded, and then are struggling within from the stage, which is where they need the most help typically.
Mm. How do you define what
And
are
right
yeah,
now,
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
so what were you
I
about
was
to say?
I was just gonna say, especially right now, with the political tension between U.S. and China, and then we're seeing hardware companies slowing down their ability to like work with Chinese manufacturers, but there's still a few different alternative solutions and really like upselling, for example, the existing like Chinese hardware in robotics.
Mhm. I wonder, maybe we can talk about AI because I feel like that's where I guess like most of the money are flock into. So like I think like you guys have a really unique perspective on AI because when I'm like looking at the current portfolios, there's like, the music AI startup, and then there is just like 3D avatar, and then there is like just like so many different things. And like I guess like compared to traditional, like because every day we chat with like infrastructure or like application layer of things like with different investors. It seems like you guys are really focusing on like the application side slash I guess consumer I would say. Maybe if you could talk about like your AI investing strategy, and then what are, let's say, maybe we could use any of your existing portfolio as an example on like how you kind of find the company to how you diligence them to thinking about exit and like, how you evaluate like to put a check in to any of the AI port codes.
Yeah, great question. I think AI itself is going to be, I mean, it's the technology that underpins all future companies, right? So nobody these days are talking about like Facebook or LinkedIn, oh, we're a software, or we're an internet company.
Mhm.
So I think AI is going to become this underlying technology that kind of is penetrating through every single industry and every type of application. And then so instead of thinking about what our AI investing strategy is we want to think about investing from a what's the social movement? What are we seeing? What are some of the different regulation or regulatory and business arbitrage opportunities we can see, and also where's the highest density of talent floating walking towards. And then so instead of thinking from like a technology first perspective, like why is the world going towards the direction we're going, and why are these young kids, I mean, we talk a lot about this, like the age of the founders now we're seeing are getting younger and younger, and then why are we on these like like pitch dates with all the 18, 19-year-olds, like why is this happening? And then so especially the smartest, most ambitious young people are now starting companies in this industry. And then so yeah, we want to keep our pulse on the keep our fingers on the pulse on where the industry is kind of going, and then capturing the best people that are already living in the future. And I think I really am a firm believer in this statement. I think it comes from Chris Dixon. The smartest people, what the smartest people are doing on the weekends is what average people will do on the weekdays in 10 years. And I think in San Francisco specifically, we really are living in the future. And so really just immersing myself in these like builder community and observing what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then finding the best people within this ecosystem, and then within these communities. These are like the strategy we deploy, and then in the industry, and then and ideas that we believe in. I mean, as long as they're not building, I don't know, like an ice cream truck or something crazy. There's a new real user. Maybe the next generation ice cream truck is is being built right now, and that's a like $1 billion market. Yeah, so excited to
Um,
spend time with smart people, and then given the stage we're in, because we're first check into a company after the friends and family and folks around, and so we really need to lean into the founder angle, and we're happy to do that.
so I guess like another question is like, how do you filter the founders? Because I feel like you went to a lot of events in IRL. We met at a bunch of events at IRL. And how do you think about like the founder background and like as well as like the I guess the diligence on the founder? Because I think at the earlier stage there's less data about like how the founder have historically been performed um, as a founder. I guess like what are some stuff that you use to leverage as a benchmark to evaluate the founders? And then obviously I feel like Boost seems like have a very unique approach than like a lot of these like other VCs because I feel like you guys are really betting on like I feel like it's very lean towards the founder themselves
Yeah,
than
exactly.
most of these are.
Yeah, I think that it's funny. Some of my friends in robotics have been asking me how my like what's the yeah, how I've been leveraging my background in investing. But I think 9 out of 10 times I'm more tapping to the right side of my brain and speaking the human language and being more empathetic towards the founders than speaking the technical language. I mean, it's a huge advantage. I can get on the level with the founders, but at the end of the day, it's still like a human to human conversation. And so I love spending time in person at events. And I think it's a great, when you're surrounded by like hundreds plus people, it's almost easier to spot out the best in the crowd. And then just like it's like a spidey sense thing. It's hard for me to describe now, given like how new I'm in the industry. And I think the VC part of it is really just articulating your gut feel, your intuition, and putting those into words, which is something I'm very excited to learn more about. And then like it's something I want to hone as a skill as an investor, and tons to learn every day. And so when you're in a room with 100 people, you can very quickly tell like who is the most interesting people just through the way they're moving around the crowd, the kind of topics they're discussing. And then so I go to events with sometimes just one goal and finding the most important person, or not important person, most interesting person, sometimes the least important, in the room, and have a conversation with them. And because typically what we see is interesting people tend to self-select into groups with other interesting people, and then so that kind of just helps me to through like the different community. And then I'm just such a curious person by nature, by design, and I love spending time with fun, smart people. And then in San Francisco specifically, that typically or most of the time coincides with the founder.
What's
And
a
so in
Mhm.
terms of so to answer the second part of your question, I know I keep getting distracted with my thoughts. What is the diligence process and what we look for in a founder? I think in a young founder profile, it's certainly very challenging given sometimes they haven't had held a full-time job yet, right? They have like a track record of internships from top tech companies, or having amazing projects they've done. And so one way is to really just spend time with them and seeing how they react to things. Like on the call, for example, I asked them like, oh, how are you balancing your startup life with your schoolwork? And then what are some of the strategies you're deploying? And just from the way they're answering that question, you can already get a lot of insight on like how they're approaching their startup and how serious they're taking it. And then it just comes with spending time and then getting opinions and thoughts from their friends, and then going to the place where they're spending time in, and then seeing who else is around them. Because a lot of times, I mean, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? So if everyone around you is very ambitious and is very serious and committed to their craft, to building a company, then it's more likely we're making a lot of assumptions. And then I think in the earliest stages, the role of the investor is just to understand the risk you're taking and being okay and being comfortable accepting the risk. And then, yeah, I think betting on a lot of younger founders give us future upside, asymmetric to someone that's already pre-filtered, pre-validated, and raising at a higher valuation. But it's also directly correlated to the amount of risk we're taking at the earliest stages.
I wonder from like a return perspective, like I guess like since you mentioned about like ownership, um, I guess like an ownership target, but like what about like I guess like the check size? And then do you invest in like every company the same check size? Or like is this like a very it depends on the valuation, how much ownership you are trying to target, that kind of stuff?
Great question. Yeah. So when I initially talked about Boost, I didn't cover this, so I'll fill in that gap. So we write checks ranging from 250K up to a million for our core
Mhm.
investments. And in addition to that, we also have a 50K founder start program, which is something tailored towards like younger first time founders getting themselves off the couch of their friends and family. And like that first initial VC validation to push them to go further with their company, with their idea. And then so with the 50K check size is more a standardized across all the investment we made, which is how we found Nosu, now Sprint Dev, so
Mhm.
Audrey's company. And so it's a standard deal. And then it's the goal of that check is to move as quickly as possible and to really find the best talent before the world realizes their potential. And I think timing is a huge part of the game of venture. And then how you find them, when you find them, how fast you can move. These are all directly correlated to the outcome of the investments. And so we with the 50K, that's something we look for. And then for the core check size is 250K up to a million, and these are things we tailor that towards the founder's need, and then the stage they're in, how much fundraising commitment they already have, and then and how much conviction we have around the company, and what's the ownership we're interested in taking. So it varies from company to company. And then
Totally.
so negotiation what we
Mhm.
do.
I wonder, do you guys do follow-on rounds or like do you guys just do first track into everything?
Great question. So we don't have a reserve pool in our fund.
Mhm.
However, we do follow on. We put together SPVs into the company, and so we will fundraise in addition to our core fund. And so for Radiant Nuclear's latest Series C round, we invested in them 3.5 years ago, I think almost 4 years ago at this point. And then they just closed the 100 million Series C. And then for this specific round, we raised the SPV for them. And so tapping into our LP network, our investor network, and then, and yeah, following on in that way. That's what we typically like to do. And so this
Mhm.
way we're able to give more chances and opportunities to startup companies at the earliest stages, which is why we're able to write so many checks into young companies.
I wonder when you were thinking about like I guess like since you guys are investing in one company per week, how many of them are like the 250K to a mil or two, and then how many of them are like in the 50K range?
Great question. It ebbs and flows. I think just as the nature of AI right now, it comes in batches, and sometimes if we find a pocket, a founder building something great, we'll deploy more checks. But it's a mixture of both. I don't think there is a consistent percentage or distribution of the 50K versus the 500K. But I think for the 500K, we definitely spend more time with the founders and doing
Mhm.
even more diligence, and then we want to spend more time in person with the founder as well. Yeah, and then so it's also a slightly longer process and discussion with the team. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, those deals for example, most recently in the last couple of weeks, we've done more 50K deals than the core 500K. I think,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just the ebbs and flows. And I think right now, it's so, especially with the market, the valuation is just so crazy.
Mhm.
And it's not, yeah, we're happy for the founders raising huge rounds, but I don't know, sometimes it could act as an anti-signal as well. And so I think to the core of our business, we like to play the game within a certain guardrail.
Can I ask, like, okay, so since you guys invest in so many like top crypto company, like, what were I guess like the thesis back then? Is it like more towards like, oh, let's invest in every company that we find that are interesting, or like, do you guys actually have like, for example, our perspective on X, Y, and Z? So I
Okay,
guess
that question.
maybe,
Sorry,
yeah,
what did I
no,
finish?
sorry. Oh, yeah. Like, I think my question is like for the crypto companies, you guys have pretty like I guess like I see Coinbase, I see Abra, I see like a bunch of like other companies that are doing pretty well in the crypto space or Decentraland back then, and like Etherscan, Ethereum. I don't know if it's the Ethereum Foundation or like what is going on here, but how do you think about like investing in a subsector? Like, do you invest in every company that you find that are interesting, or do you invest in like a certain like maybe there's like some thesis towards like, hey, we want to back the company that is a platform driven or like some like a marketplace, or I guess how do you think about like under a subsector which type of company to back, and then also like what if like there's two companies that are building in a similar adjacent space that like could be eventual competitors, like do you back both of them or do you select one?
Yeah, great question. I think so. I'm not the crypto person on our team. We have across the three investors, outside the two partners, we have our own like a specific industry focus and expertise, and we do have a crypto investor on our team. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think, but from my understanding, overall, as a fund strategy, so industry agnostic to whether crypto or robotics or aerospace, we want to back a general like social movement, and then what we're seeing that is in an inevitable future, and then we want to see who are the top people, the smartest people building in that space, and then we I wouldn't say capture them all, but we want to bet on a group of founders that are leading in an industry and or movement, and
Mhm.
then really becoming, like the leaders of the next generational defining company. And then
Mhm.
so as a fund, we don't have like a what's that word? Like we don't steer away from backing competitors as long as the founders are okay with us taking bets and hedging those bets.
Mhm.
And
Uh,
in general, the founders are very friendly to each other, even with the competitors. Like we curate a very like a wholesome and nice and open, transparent culture among the founders.
mm. One of the audience asked, like, what runway do you expect from different amount of investments?
What runway? So in our investment, like per investment, what we are anticipating to see in the founders.
Mhm. I guess.
Um, yeah. So quick question.
I think it's 18 months, right?
Yeah,
Every
so on average, like 18 to 24 months, and then we
Mhm.
will always encourage founder. I mean, if they're able to raise as much money as possible, that's good. In a way that in you want to collect like a war chest, right? Especially during
Mhm.
market downturns,
Mhm.
but then still able to operate lean, and then being very disciplined with the deployment of the capital or spending and with their operation cost. And then so I think the runway though it's an arbitrary number. Like in the pitch, we see founders raising, we're targeting this round for the next for us to have to build a 16 to 24 month runway. But things always happen. There's so many unknown variables in a journey, especially with the earliest founders. And then so the best thing we can do is to really be diligent about understanding where they're spending their money on and kind of being a mirror to their own thinking process. And then, being a sounding board too and help them to brainstorm. But typically we've seen founders who are able to extend that runway out to 3 to 5 years. And we've also seen founders who burn through their entire round within 6 months. So it's a little bit all over the place. But I think in terms of target, we want the founders to be raising for the next 18 to 24 months.
I wonder, I feel like this is such a different fund strategy like than a lot of like these other funds because like we have a lot of LPs on the show. Like most LPs prefer you have to have like a concentrated approach, what especially when the fund's getting bigger. But obviously you guys are earlier stage fund. Like, is there a benchmark on like things that you should not invest in? Because it seems like you guys have a very broad portfolio, and then also there's so many logos. Like when you go to the website there's literally hundreds of company that you guys have ever backed. And then is there like a mandate on like what are things that we shouldn't invest in?
Um, what are things we shouldn't invest in? Things that are I mean, right now it's a fund. We have this concept or idea, and then if you read Adam Draper's latest, it's just not it's not what my personal thoughts on this is. But like as a fund, we're really trying to push for this idea of short academia, and so a lot of what we're trying to back is to distribute and then equalize the opportunity, the playing field for people who don't come from a blue chip background. For example, if they didn't go to Stanford, for people who didn't have the opportunity to kind of be in the privileged position to follow like a very like elite career path, and then we want to give those founders a shot. And then so what we are not investing in right now, I guess it's like as a general archetype, is people who's never really failed in their life. They've always experienced successes. Everything they've wanted to do, they're able to accomplish, and they've never had to really overcome adversity and challenges in any aspect of their life. So it's still very founder driven approach. Or yeah, people who are saying all the right things and are very scripted, and that they know they're sticking to the book. We at the core of Boost VC, we want to find people who are rebellious, right? People who don't fit into like this the square peg in the round holes, and then yeah, people who are a little bit of a like on the edge of the market map. And then these are the founders we lean into. And then so what we don't back is yeah, like say someone, I mean, I'm sure these founders are able to find investment opportunities, like someone who is on the older side starting a energy like a distribution company, for example. Like these would be the kind of investment we typically don't spend too much time in.
Mm. What about like I guess like from the LP perspective, like do you guys have like a more I guess like institutionalized base LP base or like would you say it's more towards like family offices or like people who are like expert in particular industries? Obviously we can talk about it on a high level instead of like going into particular details.
Honestly, I'm not the best person on the team to be answering this question. From my understanding, is we have a distribution of different types of like, yeah, we have family offices, institutions, and fund to fund and individuals as well. And so yeah, but in terms of the specific breakdown, that's something for Brayton, one of our founders of Boost VC. Next time, if you have him on the show, definitely drill him on all the LP questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
but I'll let you know that's of interest of the industry.
I wonder since you guys invested in the space.
Yeah,
So
aerospace.
what are some interesting companies that are coming out of that space? I feel like nowadays every person since like I feel like the successful Andro, like every person has been like paying a lot of attention into anything deep tech, and especially space. And like I wonder
Yeah.
how are you thinking about the space? What are some interesting things that you're seeing in the industry? Is that like people building the next rockets or like what are people building in that
Yeah,
world?
great question. I was gonna mention this in the market trend actually. So, um, space, I think in the last few, even just from last fall, like has
Mhm,
shifted in the just from what we're seeing
mhm,
tons of companies just in the focus of space companies. So, I think from early to mid last year, we had seen a wave of space companies solving for like space communications, space data center. We've
mhm,
seen space manufacturing companies, and then asteroid mining, moon mining for
mhm,
rare materials, and harnessing, like solar energy from space and transmitting that and down to Earth. Like all these very like verticalized, very broad stroke ideas coming out
mhm,
beginning last year or even like end of 2023, ever since
mhm,
the launch cost reduction Boost VC as of SpaceX launch.
mhm,
Um, and so what we're seeing recently, though, is like there's a correction with the hype among the space founders. Now we're seeing more of like space infrastructure companies, as in like the optics, the sensors, the picks and shovels of the industry. And then people are starting to take a more collaborative approach and then specialize in like specific niche within the overall space industry. And then I think
mhm,
that's a really interesting trend we've been observing. And then outsourcing is becoming a more like people, yeah, companies are becoming more comfortable with outsourcing their parts. Like for example, SpaceX had to really build everything they had in house, and then from everything from ground up, right, from design to manufacturing. And now with the influx, with the abundance of space companies, there has to be a strong like supply chain and manufacturing like backbone to support the boom of the industry. And so we're seeing more of these like niche technology and kind of by partnering with this established like larger ambition aerospace companies, they're still able to make a lot of money and yeah, and support our customers in the meantime.
What is actually in the supply chain of a space company? So is this like just like the rocket? I mean, maybe I think you have better like terminologies than me because
Great,
I'm
great
really not
question.
familiar.
Great question. So there are a lot of, I mean, different parts. In terms, I mean, I don't want to give you like a list of 1,000 different parts of
Mhm,
what constitutes a rocket ship, but like
mhm,
different sensors, propulsion, and then fuel, and yeah, and different
mhm,
angles and communication tools. There are tons of different like components and then buckets of what makes a satellite or a rocket
mhm,
function in space. And then so positioning a satellite in space requires different propulsion and different like communication tools, back downlink and uplink. So different, I would say, different functions of a either a rocket or a satellite. Yeah, and then so what that entails is it goes through a design cycle and testing cycle and manufacturing, and yeah, so that it's a very very long lead time, and then it goes through different testing cycles, which is okay. So what I think one thing that's unique about space industry is if we're manufacturing parts for cars, we're able to run through the design and testing cycle all in one facility. And then, but for space, we really need to, because of the different like noise and radiation and different environment space hardware has to be operated in. The testing cycle becomes you have to test it on Earth in a vacuum, and then eventually the final demo and testing has to be done in space to validate the feasibility of your integration into the rest of the system. So it's a
Mm.
longer cycle, more complex, and then so imagine if you have to, as a space company, if you have to like run through the cycle for each component you're building, it's very resource draining.
Where do people actually invest most of their money in? Is that like actually building the rocket, or is this more towards like you mentioned about this communication in between of, I guess, launching the satellite or like do that? I guess like the software component.
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it comes down to the team and then the level of experiences because I mean nobody really, the honest truth is we don't really know where the future of space industry is, right? We haven't really seen this many space startups
Mhm.
ever
Mhm.
in the history of humanity. So we
Mhm.
don't really know what is necessarily the who is going to win, but I think if we think from first principle, like what is required, and then we need to get the rocket, the parts, the satellite from ground to space, and then we need to be able to understand the failure scenarios, and then to communicate to the satellite when it's up in the sky, and then and when it's in orbit, and what are the kind of useful insight we can actually get, like what's the objective and purpose of each satellite. And I think breaking down that from backwards, right, from the objective, from the end goal, and then figuring out what is required at each step, and then it's very similar to my analogy earlier, going from like where we are now to the 30 to 50 year the horizon with humanoids. There are just tons of opportunities in the middle. And so the same thing applies to the space industry, in my opinion. And I'm sure other people will have stronger opinion if they're specialized in space investing. And then so every piece of the value chain can have a unique opportunity there. And it's
Mm.
yeah, it all comes down to who are the best people, like the founder market fit, as we usually say. Like, what are some of the unique insight you have around the industry? Like, why are you the best team? Are you able to pull the best team together? Like, are you a charismatic and visionary founder who can really like pull the top tier, the most elite team together to solve the problem? And I think what's interesting about the space industry, just one observation I have recently is it's I think Paul Graham wrote about this. So I don't want to take any credit here. So paradoxically, right, and the harder the harder the problem you're solving, the better you have to be at fundraising and storytelling and delivering the bigger vision instead of focusing heads down building. But then the like the software SaaS founders are spending more time building the actual product because that's at the core of what your business value proposition is.
Mhm.
So yeah, the best space founders right now are really the most charismatic. They're great at pulling capital in,
Mhm.
but it's yet to be proved and validated whether that is going to be the best viable, or if there's a correlation between the quality of the product in the company and the ability of fundraising for founders.
I don't know if you have 1 minute for this audience question or okay, so he asked about or she asked about how about quantum tech? Quantum computing or quantum?
Computing.
I don't know what is quantum tech. Maybe is this like an actual word?
Quantum computing in general, I mean, I think the industry is what power. So at the age of AI, that we're thinking about what's the next to
Mhm.
empower AI's throughput and compute and empower. And then so there's a different angle from thinking about this. So we're looking at like some companies are solving the alternative energy side. How can we power the AI
Mhm.
uh, data centers? And there's also the how can we enhance the computing process itself, which is what I think the audience is alluding to, the quantum tech. Yeah, taking a different approach to the fundamental underlying compute and efficiency and lower down the cost. What do I think about the quantum tech world? We are talking to quite a few quantum teams and then people who are solving in this industry. And I think, yeah, it's a future that's coming. It's inevitable. There will be a few winners that dominates the space. Um, yeah, and we're excited to look at quantum stuff. And
Mm,
if anyone's starting in quantum computing, we're happy to have conversations and just thinking this through with the founders.
mm. Okay, so let's do like a quick women fire round for you.
Let's do it.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, Atomic Habits, probably. I think it's not really necessarily related to investing, but I think it's the compounding effect, the ability to kind of incrementally get better 1% each day, not just in building habits itself, but building relationships and then building skills, and then yeah, and I think that life is all about compounding, and then just yeah. So which is why I like it, like Jensen says, it's a 30-year-old overnight success, right? So it's I'm a firm believer in that, and so I think I constantly go back to that book and think
Mm,
about the philosophy behind it.
Well, who made the biggest impact in your career?
Probably my mom. I think she is such a ambitious woman. Like even right now, she is 60 and she is still pursuing her PhD because she's always had this dream growing up
Oh.
in China. She wants a PhD in the US. So she's just never giving up and she's held such high standards for herself. And I'm constantly inspired by what she is providing to the world. And she used to be a professor at English professor in China. And then after we immigrated to the US, now she's a Chinese teacher in high school, and shows just like the amount of pressure and then just the compromise she's made to give me the life I have today. I really am forever grateful for her. And then from a technology perspective, Steve Jobs, I used to have like all of his quotes on my wall, and then I've lived my life believing in this. Like, if you're not crazy enough to think you can change the world, like people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And then so really just yeah, how can I create my reality distortion field to kind of create that future? It's been interesting.
Uh, Love that. Who would you invite to a dinner party?
Right now, probably Jensen Huang. I think I really want to learn about yeah, just like understand his path, because I think he is a very like a asymmetric type of CEO running $1 trillion business, and then also one of the only few like Asian leaders in the tech industry. And I think I really want to pick his brain on the kind of like culture and like psychological mindset challenges he's had to overcome to be in the position he's in today, because I think it's given I mean, our Asian culture to arise from that kind of like conforming and then harmonious driven culture, and then it's very different from what it takes to win in the U.S.
Where can we find you outside of work?
I'm probably running. I love running. It's a great way for me to process information and then yeah, to really just like give myself a different perspective. I do my best thinking in running, and I have this like workflow now to dictate to my phone and then
Mhm.
converting that into most of my LinkedIn posts are drafted when I'm running. So I love the process of doing that.
Love that. Well, Emily, thank you so much for coming to the show today, and you're so fun to chat with as always. Also, everyone want to quickly plug to our event next week. It's your probably last weekend to get the tickets. Um, okay, I constantly forget about to plug. But anyway, so shameless plug. This is our event, and a lot of like top investors and founders are going to be there. Emily's going to be there as well. Check it out. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. I just want to say, Grace, thank you for all the work you're doing for the community. You're an inspiration for a lot of people out there. I know for a fact. And then just because I know you, I really appreciate everything you're doing. Extremely hardworking, resilient, and yeah, you're an awesome human.
Thank you. You too. Okay, let me quickly end stream. Oh, hi. Also, Rukaha. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but